This video is going to be about things that we are fond of in Mexico.
And not so fond of in Mexico.
What I'm fond of about Mexico is that it only takes me an hour to maybe 2 hours at the most to dry a load of laundry. That's awesome.
Not so fond of is the stiffness of the towels after they've been hang drying.
Next is street vendors. You can usually find them in the same location and the food is good. Bueno, and it is cheap. Haven't learned the word for cheap yet. And most of them you can sit down there. They have tables and stuff. And most of the ones that Mark and I found, some of them do not have it where you have to stand with your food, but most of them have a place for you to sit.
The weather here in Mexico, and probably more specifically Morelia where we're at, is fantastic. I mean, it gets into the 80s, maybe the low 90s at the hottest. We will get sometimes a breeze comes through. Right now we're in the wet season, which means that basically rain comes in later in the afternoon and might rain for an hour or two, and then it will clear up. Sorry about the wind-blown comb-over hair look.
It's the Donald Trump look.
See.
And see up here? That's what we're talking about. Clouds like that, that'll start to come in. And over here. So sometimes it means something. Most of the time, when you're out and about and you hear that loud thunder, you know that means take cover soon or make it home as fast as you can. And if you're far away, jump on the nearest combi.
A lot of times you'll see stairwells without handrails of any kind, so you always have to watch out for that. And that's just one of the things about Mexico that's different than the U.S. Their safety standards are a little bit different here, so just be prepared for that and have good balance, which I do not have, but luckily I have not fallen off the staircase yet.
And be very careful if you've had 1, 2, or 3 margaritas or a couple of cervezas. That's my advice on taking those stairs with no rails.
The other thing we're really fond of about Mexico is the culture. I mean, it seems like every day is a day for celebration here, and they do celebrate everything. They could be celebrating the fact that it's June 12th, but they always do everything with family. It's a very family-oriented culture, and that there's a lot of family time together. You see people out in the parks as families. You see people walking on the streets as family. And as Paulette would say, it just makes my heart warm.
And it does make my heart warm to see that. And in the U.S. you really don't see that. It's like they keep their culture, and I love that about Mexico. I love how they celebrate just about, anything all the time. And, it's just their generational culture. And that's what is so awesome about Mexico, in my opinion. Not so fond of are the walk-up steps. It's like a 1-step to the bathroom, sometimes hallways, sometimes kitchens. Not real fond of that. And when Mark and I had our gas leak, we were using the downstairs apartment that hasn't been rented out temporarily. And one day Mark was walking up there and he almost tripped, but he caught himself because he missed that step up to the kitchen because our apartment doesn't have that. And then I was making us dinner one night, and I think I had some stuff in my hands, if I remember correctly. And what happened was I forgot this step was there, and so I just went to go walk into like the dining room area, like by where the door was, and I totally tripped, went down on both my knees, had some bruises, and it hurt like a mother because everything is tile. So that really hurt my knees, and I went down on both of them just with full force, not even knowing that was coming, of course. So, yeah. The step-ups are not my friends.
Something that we're not so fond of is gringo pricing, and it's hard to know, if you're being gringo priced or not. I think the perception here amongst Mexicans is that if we're European or American or Canadian, we're all rich in their eyes. So if you see people coming up to you on the street and they offer you one price, either of course you can accept it or negotiate another price if it's something you're interested in, or just walk away. And when you walk away, a lot of times they'll just give you the lowest possible price that they can give you, and you can either accept that and buy whatever it is they're selling, of course, or not.
A lot of these vendors are in Mercados too, so most of them will come down about maybe $1, maybe $2 at the most. And if you want to haggle a little bit less than that, then just know that they're probably going to say no and you're going to walk away, and you need to be okay with that. That's just the way it goes here.
And of course, the other thing to keep in mind is that, in this time of COVID-19, people in Mexico are really struggling. So, Paulette and I don't mind paying a little bit more than we'd wanted to pay for an item. We always tip a little bit, more than we would have normally when we're in a restaurant. So I think it's, times like this, it's also very important to show compassion, because a lot of these people in Mexico are really struggling to get by right now.
And our meal that Mark and I had today came to, what was it, 78 pesos or something like that? It was was it 26 pesos for each meal or something?
Yeah, it was 78 pesos.
78 pesos. It was 26 pesos for what Mark got, 26 pesos for me, and 13 pesos each for the soda. And so we just left them the 100 peso. A lot of times we leave a 20%, sometimes we'll even leave more. It's not a problem. If they tell us how much something is and they go to give us the change, sometimes we just don't take it because we know that a lot of them are having a hardship, and that's okay with us. Not that they're having a hardship, but that we leave a little bit more for them.
Another thing we're really fond of about Mexico is garbage pickup. For us, it doesn't happen like it did in the United States, where you would take your garbage out like every Tuesday. Here, at least where we're at in Morelia, you keep your garbage and then you listen for a guy ringing a bell on the street, and that's your cue that the garbage is going to be picked up. And so you gather up your bags, take them down to the curb, and set them out. And in the past, we'd been giving them 10 pesos each time, but in this time, again, with times being so tough, we've been giving them about 20 pesos, and we separate out the garbage from the recycling as well. Now, a couple of times we've had it where someone will take the recycling and the money and leave the garbage behind, but that hasn't happened that often, and frankly, whether it's 10 or 20 pesos, it's not that much for us, so that's just something we deal with.
My whole perspective is, what, I guess if they needed that money, then they needed that money, right? They needed it for something, and that's just the way it works out. And if we need to slip another 20 under there, then we do that. The other thing that I am not so fond of, and I've mentioned before in other videos, is the sidewalks. You will probably get in the habit, or you should get in the habit, of always looking down, because there could be a brick missing, there could be what is he doing? There could be a brick missing. There could be just unevenness. As I had a look at my foot, I thought maybe I had a big old ant on it, and their ants are ferocious, and I think they bite. So the sidewalks can be missing stones. They could just be up and down. Everything. So always be aware of the sidewalks. Some places in Mexico have better sidewalks than others, so that's my recommendation. I probably don't look as friendly because a lot of the times I walk looking down, although I always try to put my head up and smile and say, buen dia when somebody passes by. Okay, the other thing that I have relied on is my Google Translator. And that's if the conversation gets too deep and over my head with my little bit of Spanish that I know. Then I'll pull it out, and like with my landlord, we'll use it back and forth to understand what he's saying. Most of the times, though, you can get the gist of what they're saying. And my landlord is really good at charades. Isn't that what that's called, Mark? Charades?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like this morning, he was trying to tell us something, and it was funny. It was like playing charades. The other use for the Google Translator is when we go to restaurants and I'm not sure what some of the items are, although we are learning. I'm picky, as I've mentioned before, and I want to know that there's no olives, which I haven't learned olives yet. Onions is cebollo, cebolla, I think, cebollo, one of those, cebollo. And then tomatoes I don't like, and a lot of picky stuff. So I need to look at the menu to make sure that it's not on there. Oh, and then there's the sin. Wait a minute. And then there's sin and con. Sin means without, and I'm real good at that one, and con means with.
I, on the other hand, will eat just about anything that's put in front of me as long as it is food.
The other thing is when I see the grandmas with their grandkids begging for money, sitting on the sidewalks, that's hard to see. And then a lot of times you'll see, well, not a lot, but sometimes you'll see like amputees with both their legs missing sitting on the sidewalk, just like on the corner, asking for money. Some being pushed in wheelchairs asking for money. And then we always see this local guy that has a wound on his leg. And I know this sounds disgusting, but I think he picks it because it never seems to heal. And he goes around always asking for money where it's dripping blood a lot of times. So that I am not so fond of.
And yes, we have seen him picking at his wound.
Not so fond of the loud firecracker, like bombs going off. Sometimes it happens early in the morning, sometimes it happens late at night, like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. But like a lot of things in Mexico, you kind of get used to the sounds of Mexico, and you know, you either grow fond of it or not so fond of it, or learn to live with it. And you know, I mean, that's Mexico. But the thing is too, is the neighborhood that Mark and I live in, it's not so bad. Oh, another thing too is the barking dogs. There's only like, I think 2 barking dogs near where we live, and it's not that bad. A lot of neighborhoods could be really bad where you have several barking dogs for a long time. Ours is not like that.
And while the firecrackers could be startling, it probably doesn't bother me as much. It's just basically some Mexican family or some Mexicans are just out celebrating something. So you kind of got to be happy for them. Another thing that I am personally very fond of is the 100 peso haircuts. They do a great job. It doesn't take that long. And, you know, at the end, I still leave, you know, maybe 20, sometimes 30 pesos for a tip.
Not so fond of the bug bites. They love me. Love me. I can be sleeping. I could be outside at a park, you know, but I do wear these all the time. My flip-flops. So I'm more susceptible to getting bit than Mark, but they love me. It doesn't matter where I'm at. They just seem to find me. In fact, I got one right here somewhere. Woke up with that one this morning and a bite on my arm. Yeah, it's a never-ending story for me. Not fond of it all.
So Paulette has a little project that she's working on, and I'm going to let her explain that to you.
Right now, I have this little project going where I am trying to collect data from people out there, you guys, out there wherever you are. Switzerland, Florida, wherever. telling me, you know, your reasons why you want to move to Mexico, or your reasons why you changed your mind about moving to Mexico. And I have a couple of questions that I'm looking for you guys to answer, and if you could message me or email me, that would be fantastic if you want to participate. Like one of them is like how old you are, why you decided to move to Mexico, what area in Mexico and why that area, and had you traveled to Mexico previously, and if you're already living here, you know, how long you've been here, and where you guys moved from. Did I already say that? Where you guys moved from? And lastly, the advice that you would give to somebody that is considering moving to Mexico. So I'm really looking forward to that. If you guys could really help me out with that information, I would really appreciate that. You can email me. My email is funlovinggal59@yahoo.com, and I would really appreciate to hear from all of you guys out there on your stories.
So what you're about to see is another one of Paula's projects that she's undertaking, and that is just the cleanup of wherever we're at, whether we're in a park or walking along the street. She carries a pair of gloves with her now and a bag, and I'll be helping her once I find gloves here that are big enough to fit my hands. So this is what's pretty cool about Mexico. Families just come to the park. In this case, they've strung up a hammock and they're just sitting around enjoying the afternoon, having a good time with one another.